now that we're navigating around in Max a little bit, we can kind of find our way around. Let's talk about what we're going to do now that we're in here. I want to talk to you first about kind of the different ways you can model things in 3D Studio Max. And when it comes to visualization, and specifically architectural visualization, you use mostly spline modeling and some poly modeling. And you also do a lot of modeling with just standard primitives like we saw in some earlier videos. So maybe we can start right there. Remember, we go to the command panel, which is kind of where all our create tools are. You could also go up here to create, and these are all the different things you can create. But it's the same thing as over here, and this is usually more accessible. So this is what I use. So to create a simple box, you click on box, and these are called standard primitives. And you click at the first corner of the box and drag to the next corner of the box and then let go. And then it's gonna want to know the height, so you drag up without the button clicked, and then you click to close. So just like this, boop, boop, boop. Okay, those are boxes. There's also spheres. These are all the standard primitives you can use. A cylinder, you'll draw the circle first and then drag up for the height. Okay, so you can go through all your standard primitives, but remember, if you click on the box and then go back into your Modify tab, which is this one, Modify, then you can go back to all those parameters that you previously set, and you can adjust them more. So let me just show you what some of these things do. I mean, some of these are self-explanatory. Length, width, height. The length segments, right now it's just one segment, but if you do this, you'll see what I just did is hit F4, and that shows the wireframe of the objects. So you can see that that's adding more segments into that length, adding more segments this way, adding more segments this way. Okay, so then you just have a box that's divided up, and I'll show you how you can use that later on. Of course, with the sphere you can go and do the same thing. This segments setting here, that turns down how many segments there are in that sphere. So if you turn it down real low, you can see that it doesn't look much like a sphere anymore. You turn it up real high, it gets really smooth. So in 3D, everything is made up of what we call polygons, just squares. Okay, so the more squares there are on that sphere, the smoother it's going to look. But the more processing power it's going to take when you're trying to move around in your scene. So you find a nice healthy balance. Usually the default is fine for spheres. Now remember, you can put modifiers, and I showed you the modifier stack earlier. You can put modifiers onto all your standard primitives. So if you go here to modify and go to the modifier list, you can drop down and you can see all the different things that you can do to this standard primitive. Now a lot of these probably won't make sense at first, but we'll go through kind of the important ones as we go throughout this course. One interesting one, FFD 4x4x4. When you add a modifier, sometimes you can go into what's called sub-object mode, and if you click on this plus mark here, then it gives you options of what level of detail you want to be selecting in. Okay, so if on an FFD modifier, if you go into control points, then it gives you all these control points over here that you can control on your box. Now, show you what this does. If you select one of these and make sure you're in move, see if I can get it. Oh, I'm not in control points mode. Okay, go into control points, select that control point, and there you go. So FFD modifier kind of creates a lattice work around that box, and you move the control points to kind of bend the box or warp the box in the direction you want it to go. That's actually a really useful modifier, and we might look into a little more as we get further into the course. Okay, so that's just really quickly and really basically standard primitives. If you go out of control points, out of subobject mode there, we'll click the whole box. We'll just delete that for now. Let me show you splines and what they can do. So shapes, instead of solid objects, we want to go to shapes to create splines or lines. Here you can create, like we saw earlier, a circle, an arc. This is more like drafting, like in AutoCAD. In architecture, we use this a lot because, look, if we go to the front view, we could draw a little wall of a house. Obviously, this isn't very nice. Then you can add in a rectangle like that. I could give you a simple wall, and then we could use that extrude button we used earlier. Gives you a little thickness to the wall. Then you can do something like this where you copy that whole thing. I'm going over this quickly now as an overview, but we'll get into it more later. So now I've got a copy of that same line. If I erase this one, then I'm just left with that one. And if I put what's called a normal modifier on it, all that does is turn that spline into a surface. So normal. Now if I hit F3, oh, that's not working. I must have deleted something. No, that should work. Is it just showing up black? Yeah, it's there. Oh, it's flip normal. Okay. So as you can see, I left just that one rectangle there and put a normal modifier on it, which just made it into a surface. So now you could use that as a window, and we'll go into all that later. But splines, basically you use them to draw a shape and then extrude it to turn it into a solid of some sort. Now one other tool that we use a lot for modeling is just regular polygons. So if you took a rectangle and put a normal modifier on it, or if you just said right click, convert to edit poly, that turns it into a surface as well. Now polys, you can take and move the vertices, and again you can go into subobject mode up and edit poly, and you can select the vertices, you can select the edge like that, you can select the whole polygon or something called an element or a border that selects any borders around the polygon. Now there's a ton of tools you can use with polygons. I use these mostly to model really highly organic things, custom furniture, like that guitar I showed you on my desktop. That's all poly modeled, and it's a little bit advanced for what we're talking about right now, but I'll show you some simple ways to use polygons that will speed up your workflow. But polygons can be divided up kind of however you want, really, and then you can, because you can go into the sub-object mode of that, you can select just this vertex here and move it up, move it down, whatever. So it's doing things like this, that you can morph just a simple rectangle into a really organic shape, like that guitar, or any object you can imagine. So that's the basic building blocks of models inside of 3D Studio Max.